Thank you for having me. I'm going to do something very different. I'm not going to use any slides and just actually tell a very personal story. Well, I've been asked to say something about my experiences building a climate story. So here we are. So my name is Claire, and I'm the founder and CEO of a startup called Farm to Feed. So let me first tell you about the problem we're solving, because it is a big climate issue. In sub-Saharan Africa, 50% of fruits and vegetables never reach the market for consumption, 50%. And the food system globally accounts for 25% of greenhouse gas emissions, 25%. It is the problem, but it is also where the solution lies. Farm to Feed is building the leading B2B food platform for hotels, restaurants, food processors across Kenya. We connect smallholder farmers to markets, higher margin markets, and we don't only collect the best produce, we also collect the off-spec produce. We have grown 100% year on year for the past 3 years. We're on track this year to double again. We have 160 B2B customers, and we have a 93% retention rate. We build our own platform from scratch for the purpose of this ecosystem because it is unique. It is not a platform that we can get elsewhere because this fragmented system needs their own solution. And we're just getting started. We launched value-added products. It's growing 30% month on month, and our samples are on the way to the US as we speak. Our vision is truly transform the food system into one that's scalable, into one that's climate resilient, into one that's equitable. And really important for this food system, it needs to cater to the growing local needs and global participation. We are killing it, clearly. Killing it. But that is, of course, not the story that is truly behind the curtains. That is not the story of how I grow a startup. It is very messy. It is horrendous on the back end. So building a startup is a very personal journey, and it has nothing to do with numbers or how much I raised or which investor I've spoken to or the pitch decks. It is about learning how to deal with problems very quickly, about patience, about how to move an unpaid team, about how to deal with rejections, a lot of rejections. It's about how to deal with grit, what grit really looks like, what is my ego, how do I get over my ego, and how do I deal with other people's egos, my co-founder egos, colleagues' egos, customers, investors. It has been a journey. So it is also about learning how to read balance sheets, how to understand what unit economics is, how to fill data rooms, all these things I actually didn't know, how to draft an employment contract or HR issues, legal issues. So how I build a startup is perhaps more of a story of my few key takeaways. So to start this, let me start more authentically and introduce myself. My name is Claire, and I'm the mother of 3 very young children, 2 of which I gotten when I founded this company. I was raised in Kenya, but I have Dutch heritage, and I'm actually a recovering management consultant. I quit the rat race, the management consultant. I traveled all over East Africa, advising other CEOs how to expand their businesses, much like the investors in the room, I can say. But then I took a sabbatical after getting pregnant with my second child. And during the sabbatical, COVID hit. And from one day to the next, farmers lost access to markets, and people lost access to income. So I started, the day after the lockdown was announced, a GoFundMe page called Farm to Feed. The idea was simple. There was no grand vision. There was none of it, no plan. Farm to Feed, collect produce from farmers that they can't sell because of COVID, and I was going to donate it to the slums. And we actually raised much more money than I expected. So I went from 1 delivery to the week to having to do 6 deliveries a week because we were in a crisis mode. And that's how I stumbled upon this problem. I fell into it I'm educated. I had no idea that 50% of fruits and vegetables never reach the market. I had no idea that decaying food releases methane 30 times more potent than CO2. And the truth is, I was hooked to the problem. I got obsessed with this problem. It is not an aha moment. It is not a moment where I made a business model, where I put the pros and cons, where I spoke to my husband. It was just, I was hooked to this problem that now I was solving with a charity. And in order to solve this commercially or sustainably, I needed a business. I knew that. But I did not know yet how I was going to solve it. So in May 2021, we pivoted. We made a business model to fit the solution I wanted, to solve the problem I wanted to solve. And here I learned my first lesson. I learned what grit truly looked like. I thought I knew what it was, but what it truly looked like is very different. And I had two co-founders from this moment. And from them, actually, I learned what it is like to be really unfazed when the shit truly hits the fan. To be unfazed when rejection number 20 comes in. To be unfazed when we get a question from an investor in a live call and you have no idea what the question means. To be unfazed when they ask, "Can I see your data room?" and you don't know what a data room is. So I learned also to never settle for mediocreness when actually all you have is mediocreness. All you can do is with resources that are mediocre, yet you're expected to be grade A. It is hard, it is tough, it is bluffing. So they say tech companies start in garages. I can say ag companies start in living rooms filled with 2,000 kilos of onions. And the smell is horrendous, and I smelled quite bad for a couple of weeks. So that's how it started, stacked against the wall, monkeys flocking into the house to grab some tomatoes. So with full dedication and very little confidence, we went to find our first customers. And after 10 no's, we finally got a yes. And we got a yes from no other person but the CEO of Art Cafe, the most recognized restaurant chain in Nairobi, said yes to our idea. It was like we landed on the moon. It was amazing. We had farm to feed posters all over Art Cafe, ones I had to design myself as lead marketing of the startup. So our butternuts, tomatoes, potatoes, onions were moving. They were moving across into homes. It was very exciting. But at the same time, we really hit a wall. Our revenue actually wasn't growing. And that brings me to the second lesson. Don't become the preacher of your obsession, because this is what I was doing. I was hooked to this problem, and I was preaching it everywhere. The CEO of Art Cafe said to me casually, and I think he doesn't realize the impact it had. He said, "My problem is not buying a cheap tomato. Claire, that is not my problem." And that's when at first I didn't really understand it, but I realized afterwards we were pushing a farmer problem and a climate problem onto our customers. They loved the idea of it, they wanted to be part of it, but there were too many workarounds, and we had become a CSR exercise. And as a climate startup that really wants to truly have an impact and a difference, being a CSR impact story is not a good place to be. We needed an overall. So I truly needed to listen to our customers, truly. And sometimes you think, I don't know how many founders there are, sometimes you think you're listening, but you're not really listening. The commitment to listening takes much more than just a listening ear. It's really trying to understand it, walking the journey with your customers. So they needed actually convenience, they needed transparency, and they needed on-time delivery and a one-stop shop. That's what they needed. Alongside the genuine opportunity to contribute to fixing the problem, yes, but not as a workaround, not as CSR, but it needed to be embedded in their operations. So that's when we moved and we transformed our e-commerce platform to something that they could really use, to something that would solve their problems. And this actually unlocked much more impact on the farmer side. With this, farmers had market access to their full harvest. So we were collecting grade 1 and grade rescue. We were reliable, we were consistent, and they had access to higher margin crops. So we were selling herbs, fruits. So we were expanding our diversity, and with that, we're able to increase farmer incomes with 250%. And with that, for every 2 farmers we source from, 3 additional labor jobs on farms are created. And that is true impact, and that is making the food system climate resilient. So that unlocked the next ceiling. So our organization grew. We got 30 people on the payroll. But it was also actually the most fragile time, because the bigger we became, the more fragile we became. So that's my third lesson. And for the founders, maybe you can relate. But the founder in you has to die a little for the CEO to be born. Zara and Nook had been doing everything, my co-founders, all at once, together. Every decision, every move, every tech play, we did it together. The scrappiness had gotten us really far. It was scrappy, we're agile. But being close to everything and being in every decision is actually what made us very, very weak. And that's when I learned about radical ownership of your role and radical ownership of your relationships. So do not take ownership of things that aren't yours, because actually it blurs everything, especially if you're the CEO. And it takes away accountability of the people that are responsible. So in this next phase, we learned about specialization, and that's what got us to where we are today. Real specialization, and really stepping into each of our roles. So my last lesson, I was trying to keep this short, but I cannot have a keynote without this very important topic. Don't change the woman. I lived a rat race across 4 continents as a management consultant, but I've never felt more woman than in this role here today. Because in every meeting, in a lot of questions, in EDs, I'm reminded of it when I step into a room. And I feel it. I feel the difference between someone asking me, how will you scale it? And what if it doesn't work? In the beginning especially, you have no track record to actually push back. You don't have the confidence to call it out, but you feel it, you know it's happening. So here are the numbers for 2024 for Africa. Female founders raised $48 million. How much did male founders raise? $2 billion. It means female founders raised 2%, less than 2%. I am a high-level person, so I always round off. But 2%, if you round that off, it's 0%. It's 0. It is almost nothing. It's negligible. I'm an engineer, it's negligible. So less than 2%. Yet women companies deliver far higher returns for investors. The numbers and the math don't add up. So we all carry biases. I carry biases, and we have to admit to all our biases. I think that's really important. So I'm not here to point numbers, but if we can recognize the biases within us. So, and I'm also saying, in this room, we also have the power to change that 0%. We in this room are the people who are in control of it. So to founders and investors, my ask is, can we be bolder to speak about this? And not on panels where everyone agrees with this statement, like I'm doing here today. We all agree it, we know it. But can we be bolder to talk about it in the rooms where it is happening, behind the closed doors? Can we call each other out? Can we give feedback without being defensive or attacking? But this is something we need to start speaking about. Because one honest conversation will do much more than all the diversity reports that we keep on reading about, than all the LinkedIn reports that we keep seeing. It starts with having the conversation and having an honest calling out of when it is happening. So when I first started my journey, I was actually told to be more aggressive and to inflate my numbers. My friends do laugh because I'm quite a bold person in general, but that's what I was told. But remember my pitch when I first started this speech. My pitch was punchy, it was sharp, but had no humanity. And I think my real story of the living room with onions, of a mother of 3, of a different kind of leadership, of vulnerability, is just as investable. So can we cherish it? We don't need to fix it. So I hope this real story lifted the curtains a little bit. So on a parting note, I guess my takeaways of this journey is follow what you can't stop thinking about. Don't preach about your obsession. The founder in you has to die a little bit. Step fully into what you want to be, and don't change the woman, change the lens. Thank you.